You are on.
Okay.
This is Bill Adrolitis, and he's going to talk to us today about how these outboards were cast originally, sand casting, investment casting, and permanent molds.
Casting. Right. So we'll start with the Waterman, which was the first really successful gasoline outboard. And this great piece of outboarding is probably all sand cast. And it was also inspired by a motorcycle engine, and that's why it looks like a motorcycle engine with the flywheels inside the crankcase. But not going too far into engine design, we really are just going to talk about casting. And this unit is either made with machining or casting. And the sand casting at that time, which is approximately 1907, was the preferred casting method, was sand casting. And I thought that rather than trying to explain that whole casting process, would refer to this great YouTube video of the Rover motorcycle and that sand casting process, which will answer a lot of questions. And we won't dwell on this. It's not going to be the best video, but I thought that we would just
get it off to this side here.
Yeah,
we can edit this.
all right.
Okay, good.
I would just explain a little about the sand casting process, and that has to do with the least amount of tooling to be able to create a shape. And the sand casting process needs the reason
What's
it's
this
called sand
piece right
casting,
here?
That's just a
Is that the pattern right there?
No, it's already a feature in the mold made by the pattern.
So this is the wet sand?
Yeah, so we're
and
looking
that's the
at
impression that the...
Yeah, and this particular wet sand really has nice features. It really holds really intricate features, and that's why it was it was used so much. As you'll see here, it's not maybe the greatest mass production technique. It's a messy process. It's slow, but it gets your foot in the door really fast. So he's putting a core in right now. So that is a piece. This happens to be a 4-stroke single-cylinder motorcycle. But you have to understand the outboards were done the same way, other than they didn't have this valve pocket business. But moving ahead, you'll see, okay, so what he has here is the next section of the mold, and that's all sand in an iron frame. And it's, again, the sand really holds a wonderful shape. And now he positions that, and it's tooled so that it nests against the previous piece very accurately. So the positioning is really, really good.
So the outer edges of that sandbox are keyed to the other half, so that there's no
perfect alignment,
misjudgment.
Right. As best as you can.
When we're looking at the seam, when these come out, the seam we see on some of these engines, that's where that joint is.
Exactly. Okay. So now he's going to put, the next thing he's going to put in is the core for the cylinder. He just put that in. And outboard, has that same thing. Otherwise, you'd have a solid cast iron chunk that you'd have to machine all that out. That's just way too much work.
I see.
So now this provides the surface of the cylinder. It's still very rough and needs to be machined.
Okay.
Okay, so he's put that in, and now the last piece he's about to drop on, which is the other half of the cylinder. And that again is in sand. It has the sprue for the filling, and now he's dropping it in. It locks in. It's clamped together. These guys are going over with the molten iron, which is about 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit. And the mold is being filled. That wet sand is a little bit complex, and I'll stop for a sec, in that if it's too moist, it makes too much steam and it'll explode.
Okay.
You'll have hot sand and hot metal all over the place. If it's too dry, it doesn't hold its shape. So it's very critical that sand is just the right consistency. So this next little bit here is now the iron is cool, and the guy is actually busting out the sand because it's no longer needed for this part. So that's a disadvantage of the sand casting, is every time you make a part, you throw away really your mold.
Yeah.
And then, but what it is that they're waiting with another pattern and another mold ready to go. So we can keep making the sand
that
molds.
piece that he stuck in there to take the place of the cylinder.
Yeah, where did it
that
go?
also breaks up. He looks like he broke it up. Okay.
Anyway.
All right.
So that's basically the sand casting process, and that's how that Waterman cylinder
And now
was
we're
made.
looking at
if you want to.
we're looking at the cylinder head now.
Right.
The raw cylinder head is
Right.
now about to be machined.
Yeah, it's mounted, and this is just how the Waterman was made. So it's now mounted in a special fixture on a lathe, and it's going to be bored. You'll see that turn. It'll start up and rotate. Here he goes, and now he's boring the cylinder. You can see the special fixture that holds it. The nice thing is he's boring the cylinder, and also he'll be facing the cylinder base so that it'll be accurate as far as perpendicularity for mounting on the crankcase. Of course, this is how the Waterman crankcase was made as well. The aluminum sand casting is now put in a special fixture on the lathe, and it's being machined. So that's
The Waterman had that Curtis Wright same rig, right?
Yeah.
And the flywheel and the bell cranks on the crankshaft were actually the flywheel. They served two jobs at once.
So anyway, I think that video will help people understand really how this was made, and I think we can move away from this unit.
So, okay, Bill, one question here. We have internally in here, we have a surface that's been machined, but we also have a space between that cylinder and the water jacket. How did they clean that out? Was that filled also with sand?
Yes,
They
had to clean it all out.
In other words, they have to blow it out.
That's a really important question, because on this unit, it really doesn't show any what people call, and it's improper expression, freeze plugs.
Right.
What people call freeze plugs are actually core plugs, and those that's how they supported that water jacket core in the sand mold without it falling apart. In this case, they probably held it here, and I think there's something over here. There's not much. It's good casting art, actually, to be able to support a sand sleeve in the middle of all this and have it stay in the mold and not move.
Okay.
Otherwise, when you bore the cylinder, you'll break through into
Gotcha.
the void.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So while we're on sand casting, we're going to move to
Now,
another...
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What I'm looking at right here,
Yeah.
this line right here on the Johnson,
Yep.
I'm looking at this line right here.
Right, that's
that
the
is
whole
where the
half.
two halves
Sand
came together.
Came together. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. So we're going to go...
We're going to see some high examples of sand casting.
Yes.
First?
Yeah. And I thought we were going to talk about this one, but
Okay.
But there's nothing to add really, other than, of course, first it was the Waterman and then the Evinrude rowboat motor. This
Correct.
is a later example.
Yes, but
But
very similar.
It's all the manufacturing techniques are the same. It's the sand cast cylinder, and actually sand cast transom bracket, sand cast lower unit, sand cast aluminum manifold. So yeah, it's that era. That was
That's the way they
technique.
did it. Okay.
Moving along though, I mean,
But now we're talking right over here, we're talking
Right.
about a post-war engine.
post World War I
Right.
engine. Right.
Well, that's, yeah.
So more and more, aluminum became quite the favored material for outboards, and people got really good in the foundries with aluminum, and they learned how to make really thin-walled castings. It brought the pattern-making art and trade to higher levels even, And one good example of this whole Alto here, which is probably a later 20s. Is this a 20? What? 20?
Yeah, it's 24.
25
I think,
or
25.
24 or 5.
Yeah.
Okay. This thing is all sand cast, and
Wow.
it's amazing actually when you really look at the castings. Aluminum rudder. It's also hollow. You can see the passages for the water. So instead of having a water pump, it used force feed from the propeller. Instead of just using one location, Ole said, "Well, heck, we got a propeller here. We're wasting if we don't use the thrust from both wings of the prop." So anyway,
Why did he use a rudder? Well, they were pretty much obsolete by this time.
so Ole was a very conservative guy, and I don't know him, so I'm speaking for him. But he really felt after his rowboat motor days and a shaking single cylinder and holding the tiller on a single cylinder engine
Do they ever,
and having
yes.
it shake, he thought, I want to move the operator of these outboards away from the engine.
Okay.
And so he said, nobody should suffer the agony of holding an outboard from twisting and turning
Good
and all
point.
that. And I think he really felt that outboards should be more of a luxury item than people thought of them. So he thought that let's fix the motor on the boat and have a rudder, and that way there we can easily steer it with rope.
All right. Now, one other thing while you're right there, and I know this has nothing to do with, but we notice right here that we've got an exhaust hub.
Yeah.
Looks like a through hub exhaust.
Right. I thought Mercury.
I thought Mercury came out
No,
with
they
that
didn't.
too. They
No,
didn't.
No,
No.
Ole was way ahead.
But why didn't they claim that when Mercury was claiming to?
I think later they did.
Yeah.
I think
It took them a few years to pick up on that.
Yeah, I
though.
think at some point I remember seeing some Evernude advertisements that showed this.
All right. Okay.
So back to the casting. This is really quite a casting.
My understanding
thing-
that was after the embarrassment at the New York Boat Show of Waterman showing up and his first outboard, and they had a huge ad campaign planned
Yeah.
in the 50s to promote the ice cream story, which was totally made up.
Yeah.
And they had to pull all their advertisement because Waterman showed up with
Right.
with
With the
his
first
old outboard,
outboard,
and Key Caver really featured him.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that was
sure
kind
he
of
enjoyed every second of it.
I'm sure
Yeah.
he did.
So this is an impressive casting in that we've got now. It's quite thin.
Yeah.
It's cored. This is not split open or machined. It's all made as one piece. It's got cores of sand, maybe supported in the mold out here someplace, but yet it appears nowhere else. So I'm not sure what kept the core from, flipping over and touching the side or whatever. But whatever it is, they really knew what they were doing. And of course, it's very smooth. One would say, well, that's not sand cast, but that's what they did. They polished everything in those days.
Okay.
This is all
In the 20s, that was a very standard thing to do then, to polish it.
lower units were all polished. Yep.
But they polished like some of the motors we see on display today, or that.
Well, I mean, it's hard to get a smooth finish and not have it shiny.
Okay, I got you. All right.
So, I think the manufacturers took great pride in these products. Considering there were no covers, the engine is hanging out in space, and how do we
Right.
make a utilitarian device like an engine? How do we make that look good? Well, shine it up, and people will go ooh ah, right?
Okay.
And I think there was a lot of competition. I mean, these sand cast cylinders, the ends were polished,
Okay.
and they're
They
smooth,
look very smooth.
and nickel
Yeah.
plated, and same with the flywheel. This is a sand cast iron flywheel, but yet you see no porosity, and it's highly polished. It was highly polished and nickel plated.
Okay.
Absence of die casting. So die casting, and maybe we'll segue right into die casting right
Okay.
now.
All right.